Tax increases for remote Australians. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian Heise here and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. I've got my stein of coffee and I thought we'd look at this article because it's discussing tax increases for remote Australians. So essentially it's looking at removing concessions. Now I am an advocate of special economic zones and zonal taxation throughout different parts of the country to encourage or make it more affordable for businesses to establish in areas which may be having some issues. Frankly, I'd rather we get rid of as much taxation as we can. So the fact that the Productivity Commission is suggesting the removal of this is a little concerning to me and a bit disappointing. So before we go through this, let's jump over here and let's learn a little bit about the Productivity Commission, because we hear about it all the time. And to be honest, this is the first time I've ever actually gone to their website to learn more about them. The first I heard about them was when they deemed it was anti-competitive to allow architects to refer to a fee scale from our professional body of what we should charge. And it's kind of frustrating that is anti-competitive. It's just a recommendation fee scale. You don't need to abide by it, but it really has destroyed one's ability to provide a level of service. Maybe that has something to do with the decline in documentation quality, perhaps. I don't know. But if you think these type of videos are important, please help me grow the channel, share the content around, discuss it at barbecues with mates between Bundy rums on a variety of different topics. We need to discuss this, because this Productivity Commission, what do you reckon? Let me know in the comments. Do you think it's like the WA Potato Board? Are they a bunch of rent seekers or central planning of our economy? So about the Commission. The Productivity Commission is the Australian government's independent research and advisory body on a range of economic, social and environmental issues affecting the welfare of Australians. So how we contribute. So the Commission contributes by providing quality, independent advice and information to governments and on the communication of ideas and analysis. Do they have anything else there? Oh yeah. 4 main output streams: public inquiries, performance monitoring, self-initiated research, and competitive neutral complaints. So, how we operate. There are 3 features of the Productivity Commission's structure and operations which underpin the effectiveness of its contribution to public debate and policy formation. What are these 3 features? So, it's independent, its processes are transparent, it adopts a community-wide perspective. The Commission legislative instructions. Well, there you go. The core functions. There are 4 main output streams of the Commission: public inquiries and research studies, performance monitoring and benchmarking, self-initiated research, and annual reporting and competitive neutrality complaints. Competitive neutrality complaints. This sounds like a lot of central planning and government meddling in the market. What do you think? Public inquiries. The Commission provides the opportunity for all points of view in the community to be heard and considered through written submission and attendance at hearings, workshops and other forums. Self-initiated research and annual reports on productivity, industry assistance and regulation. Performance monitoring and benchmarking and other services to government bodies, and a competitive neutrality complaints. Competitive neutrality policy aims to promote effective competition between public and private businesses. Specifically, they seek to ensure that government businesses do not enjoy competitive advantages over their private sector competitors simply by virtue of their public sector ownership. Well, there you go. It shows you some fundamental issues. Should the government even have businesses that are competing with the private sector? Because they'll have some other issues. So I will link to this, guys, if you want to learn a bit more about the Commission, but I think we're getting a bit of a feel for it. It'll be interesting to see how much bonuses they receive. Oh wait, they've got a quick guide here. We'll just click on that as well. Once it loads up, I'll have a quick guide to the Productivity Commission, and here you go, the core functions. So, I mean, yeah. I can't say I'm particularly surprised. In the public inquiry, they range in childcare, 2014, access to justice, public infrastructure, Tasmanian shipping and freight, Australian automotive manufacturing industries. Well, that's gone. That one doesn't exist. Resource exploration, national access regime, WTO safeguards investigation. Electricity networks, that's in trouble. Climate change adoption in 2012. Disability care and support and aged care. Well, aged care is doing terrible. The national NH disability insurance, I understand that's a lot of trouble. And climate change, we've got people protesting in the streets now, so they're not happy with what you've done. So, well, there you go. I mean, I think we'll go through this in another video in a bit greater detail. But it kind of gives you a bit of insight in the organisation that is putting forward this report to reduce your tax concessions. So, time is ticking for regional Australians to make a submission on a draft report into changes to remote area tax concessions. The Productivity Commission's draft was released on September 4, following consultation in 11 regional locations around Australia, including Kangaroo Island, Kangaroo Island, Catherine and Kalgoorlie. I need a coffee shop. Ireland. I was watching some Computing Forever before I did this, that's why. Upon releasing the draft, Commissioner Jonathan Koppel said the Commission would call for an overhaul of the system so that payments and concessions could be fairer and better targeted. The draft report recommended the zone tax offset be abolished and stated that remote Australia had changed considerably since the offset was introduced in 1945. The proposed changes could see some areas, including Darwin and Townsville, no longer considered remote. So let's have a look at some of the areas. And you've got two zones, and the bot there is telling me, great, I can't see it, but you can see here in Western Australia some of the areas, Northern Territory, and then Zone B, Queanbeyan, Queenstown, Rosebery, Airlie Beach, so you can see here what it is. And I'll link to this in the references if you want to get a better understanding. Here's some special areas, or Doomadgee, where you want to head to get some good deals. I doubt it. Attracting and keeping residents regional. So, Carnarvonton tackle and marine owner Janice Beard said it was already a struggle to keep people in small regional towns, and the move would make it even harder to attract new long-term residents. She said the draft proposal was unfair. And here is the kicker, guys. Considering it is only about a $300 tax break we get, it is ridiculous that they want to reduce it. This is over $300. $300. Now just look at this up here. How many people will be in these areas? Just think how much it costs to have that public consultation at all of these different areas here. All of these different areas. Flying out the people from the Commission, paying the highly expensive staff from the Commission to do this. Over this $300. I mean, come on. It just shows you. I did actually speak to someone who was doing the review, and his words were that everyone should pay their fair share of tax. And I went on to say, yes, I agree. But when you live in the north, pay their fair share of tax. Now, it's $300. Fair share of tax. I mean, taxation is forced upon you by the threat of violence from the state or the restriction of your freedom by the state. We already pay enough tax, and now they want to get income tax offers as well. It's just, it's frustrating. It really is, because all the money you put in the government, think about it. So they all the money these people, $300 tax break, they'll have to pay, and then it can pay for more people to work on the Productivity Commission to do more of these stupid things. I mean, it's money that stays in the economy. You want to keep it moving. You want the velocity of money to move. Every time it goes back to the government, it just slows to a halt. So, but when you live in Northwest, we don't have a choice of which power company we can choose. Every time we turn on the TV, there's some current affair program saying shop around for your power. We have the gas pipeline going past us, but you can't tap into the gas. Yeah, that's it. They don't realize how hard it is. We don't have the quality of life you get in the city. They do not give a damn about people in the country. It feels that way. Curtin University adjunct professor Lex Fullerton has been campaigning to have the offset subject to inflation for many years. In the lead up to... Wait, so it's not even getting inflation. in the lead up to the Commission's tour across remote Australia, he was hopeful the draft report would see regional Australians better compensated for the things that make life harder, including the lack of services, harsher climate and isolation. After reading the draft report, Dr. Fullerton said he believed the Commission had missed the point about why the rebate existed in the first place. In the draft report, it goes into great detail of the principle and primary purpose of the piece of legislation, he said. However, they've gone back a little further than the legislation itself and have quoted from some speeches in Parliament at the time the legislation was enacted in 1945. There was mention made by, I think, the then Prime Minister that the proposed purpose of the zone tax offset was to encourage people into the rural and remote areas of Australia, and he quotes, probably fairly, defence as the primary objective, being aware that the war had only finished in August that year. But times have moved on, and legislative interpretation has drifted away from the literal interpretation, and that's an old adage and an old system, and it was changed in 1984. You need to look at the purpose of the legislation rather than the black and white letter of the law. The legislation itself contains its purpose, so you can't go back and look at those explanatory notes. It says it is for concession and consideration of uncongenial climate isolation and lack of utilities, so the fight for fairness. WA Senator Dean Smith said it needed to be easier for people to make a decision to move to remote communities. I think the Commission does need to be held accountable, he said. I don't think the zone tax offset should go unless there were other arrangements to compensate for life in regional, remote and very remote communities, like the Pilbara. Part of my job as a Senator for Western Australia is twofold: to make sure that the final report of the Productivity Commission does properly represent and demonstrate an understanding of what life is like for regional communities in Western Australia. And then secondly, where there are findings that would be adverse for West Australian interests, to make sure that I'm making the case known to the government and encouraging the government to continue what I think is important work in defending and standing up for regional communities. So, geographic discrimination. Not everyone, though, is against the Productivity Commission's proposed changes. The Productivity Commission, it seems like the better, bureaucratic or better legislation or efficiency minister in New South Wales. It just seems ludicrous that you have a commission on productivity. A gentleman left a comment on another video just of how socialist Australia is that you don't even realise it. Everyone's just so used to it. The fact that we have an organisation like this, a commission, coming and interfering in the market, saying what you can and can't do. In fact, one submission ahead of the draft report urged the federal government to remove the offset. In his submission on February 20, before the draft report was released, Simon Kerr said the offset was geographic discrimination. The zone tax offset is effectively a payment to some taxpayers who no, it's not. It is not. You're not paying them. You are not taking as much from them by force. It is not effectively paying them. Don't see that. Taxes are people's money that is removed by them through force. Okay, and you are generously deciding to not steal as much of their money off them in the regions because it is a bit tougher living out there. That is the point. Okay, Simon? Bullshit. So, who choose to live part of the year further away from most taxpayers funded by the latter. Yeah, who cares? I submit that zonal taxation is unconstitutional. The constitutionality of the zonal tax offset has not yet been tested. While the draft report acknowledges that some things were not readily available for regions and remote Australians, it said many areas once considered isolated were no longer remote, and improvements in technology have helped reduce the hardship of life in remote Australia. So, final submissions are due Friday, the 11th of October. So, we've missed that submission. That was a few days ago. A final report will be presented to the federal government in February next year. The government will then be tasked with deciding whether to accept or reject the recommendations. So there's still an opportunity if you want to contact your, I'll zoom in here, to contact your local member or your senator probably to make them aware of your position on this. If you know people who live in the regions, let them know about it. Let them reach out to their senator or to their local rep. I mean, $300, guys. Anything we can do to stop the government taxing people, I'm for. I'm really for. and I want to learn a little bit more about the Productivity Commission. I think I'll look at that in other videos. Seems like a bunch of rent seekers. Let me know what you all think in the comments, guys. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to help me produce more content, I have a Patreon and Subscribe Star. Any support you can give really helps. Take care, everyone. I'll talk to you later.